I never believed in monsters until the night one tried to break into my house. The scratching at the windows, the impossible height of the shadow that moved past the glass, the way my dog wouldn't stop whimpering in the corner, I knew something was terribly wrong. What happened that night changed everything I thought I knew about the world, but what happened the next morning was even more impossible to explain. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 34 years old and I work as a mechanic at Henderson's Auto Shop in Flagstaff, Arizona. My wife Sarah is 32, teaches 3rd grade at the local elementary school, and our 2 kids, Michael, who's 9, and little Emma, who just turned 6, are the center of our universe. We live in a modest ranch-style house about 15 miles outside of town, surrounded by ponderosa pines and red rock formations that make Arizona so beautiful. It's peaceful out here, or at least it was until 3 nights ago. I should probably start by explaining how we ended up in this situation. About 2 weeks back, I was working late at the shop, trying to finish up a transmission job on a '68 Chevy pickup. Old man Henderson had promised the customer it'd be ready by Friday, and I wasn't about to let him down. It was past 9 when I finally locked up and headed home in my Ford F-100. The radio was playing "Ain't No Mountain High Enough" as I drove down the dark highway, my headlights cutting through the desert night. That's when I saw it for the first time, though I didn't realize what it was back then. Something was standing on the side of the road about half a mile from my turnoff. At first, I thought it was a person, maybe someone whose car had broken down. As I got closer, my headlights illuminated the figure and my foot instinctively moved to the brake. It was tall, unnaturally tall, maybe 7 feet or more, but what really got my attention was the way it stood perfectly still, watching my truck approach. The posture was wrong somehow, like a person trying to stand upright, but not quite getting it right. I slowed down, thinking I should stop and offer help, but something in my gut told me to keep driving. As I passed, the thing turned its head to follow my truck, and in that brief moment caught in my headlights, I saw its face. Or rather, what should have been a face. The features were there, eyes, nose, mouth, but they seemed stretched and distorted, like a mask that didn't quite fit properly. The eyes reflected my headlights with an amber glow, like an animal's eyes do, and that's when I hit the gas. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel as I turned onto the dirt road leading to my house. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that thing following me, but there was nothing except darkness and dust. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat in the truck for a few minutes, trying to calm down, and convince myself I'd just seen a very tall hitchhiker in strange lighting. Sarah would think I was crazy if I told her about it. I didn't mention it to anyone. The next few days passed normally. I went to work, Sarah taught her class, the kids went to school and played in the yard after homework. Michael was obsessed with his new baseball glove, practicing his catch every evening, while Emma spent her time drawing pictures of horses and asking when we could get a pony. Normal family life in 1970 Arizona. But then strange things started happening around the house. Our dog, a German shepherd named Duke, started acting peculiar. He'd always been friendly and calm, but suddenly he'd growl at the windows at night, hackles raised, staring at something in the darkness we couldn't see. Sarah mentioned that she'd heard scratching sounds on the roof a couple of times, which I attributed to branches or maybe a raccoon, though we'd never had problems with wildlife before. 3 nights ago, everything came to a head. It was a Thursday evening, and I'd just finished helping Michael with his math homework while Sarah put Emma to bed. We were settling in to watch the Flip Wilson show on our Zenith television set when Duke started going absolutely wild. He was barking and snarling at the living room window, the fur on his back standing straight up. I'd never seen him act like that before. "Daniel, what's wrong with him?" Sarah asked, moving closer to me on the couch. I stood up and walked toward the window, intending to see what had spooked him. That's when I heard it, a scratching sound, but not like a branch or small animal. This was deliberate, methodical, like fingernails dragging across the glass. The sound made my skin crawl. "Stay here," I told Sarah, though my voice didn't sound as steady as I wanted it to. I went to the hall closet and grabbed my Remington 870 shotgun, the one I kept for hunting. My hands remembered loading it even though my mind was racing. The scratching continued, moving from window to window, circling the house. Duke followed the sound, barking frantically at each window as the noise passed by. Then everything went quiet. The sudden silence was somehow worse than the noise. I positioned myself in the center of the living room, shotgun ready, trying to watch all the windows at once. Sarah had gone to check on the kids, and I could hear her in the hallway, telling them everything was fine, just a coyote or something, go back to sleep. But her voice was tight with fear. That's when I saw the shadow. It passed by the kitchen window, moving from left to right, and my blood turned to ice. The shadow was huge, at least 7 feet tall, probably closer to 8. But it was the way it moved that terrified me. Sort of jerky and unnatural, like something pretending to walk like a human, but not quite getting it right. The shadow stopped at the back door. I heard the doorknob rattle, then turn. Thank goodness I'd locked it after coming home, something I didn't always remember to do. The door shook in its frame as whatever was out there tried to force it open. The wood creaked and groaned under the pressure. "Sarah, get the kids into our bedroom and lock the door," I shouted. I heard her footsteps running down the hall, Emma crying, Michael asking what was happening in that scared voice that made my heart ache. The back door stopped shaking. For a moment, I thought maybe it had given up and left. Then I heard footsteps on the roof, heavy, deliberate footsteps walking across the shingles. It was heading toward the chimney, our fireplace. It was going to try to come down the chimney. I ran to the living room and looked up at the fireplace. We had a mesh screen across it, but that wouldn't stop anything determined enough. I could hear scraping sounds from inside the chimney now, echoing down into the house. Duke was beside himself, barking and jumping at the fireplace. I aimed the shotgun at the fireplace opening, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The scraping got louder, closer. Bits of soot and debris started falling down into the fireplace. Then I saw them. Fingers, impossibly long fingers with blackened nails, reaching down through the opening, grasping at the mesh screen. I didn't think. I just pulled the trigger. The blast was deafening in the enclosed space. The mesh screen disintegrated, and I heard a sound from the chimney that I still hear in my nightmares. A shriek that was almost human, but not quite, filled with rage and pain. Then the fingers withdrew, and I heard something scrambling back up the chimney and onto the roof. The footsteps moved quickly across the roof, then silence. Whatever it was had left. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes, shotgun still aimed at the fireplace, waiting for it to come back. Duke had stopped barking and was now whimpering, pressed against my leg. Eventually, I heard Sarah's voice from the bedroom, asking if it was safe. "Stay there," I called back. "I'm going to check outside." I know it was stupid, but I had to know what that thing was, if it was really gone. I grabbed my flashlight, a big metal mag light, and slowly opened the front door. The night air was cold and still. I swept the flashlight beam across the yard, checking the shadows between the trees. Nothing moved. I walked around the house, checking every window, every corner, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. When I got to the back door, I found scratches in the wood, deep gouges that looked like they'd been made by something with claws. The doorknob was bent and twisted, nearly torn off. But the real discovery came when I looked up at the roof. I climbed the ladder I keep against the side of the house for maintenance and shined my flashlight on the shingles. There were massive footprints in the dust and pine needles that had accumulated up there. They were shaped roughly like human feet, but elongated, with claw marks at the toe positions. Each print was at least 14 inches long. I came back down and checked the ground around the house. More prints, leading away into the forest. Whatever had attacked our house was gone, at least for now. When I finally went back inside, Sarah was in the living room with both kids. Emma was clutching her stuffed rabbit, and Michael was trying to act brave, but his eyes were wide with fear. Sarah looked at me, and I knew I had to say something, but what? How do you explain something you don't understand yourself? Some kind of animal, I said, though I didn't believe it. It's gone now, we're safe. We spent the rest of the night huddled together in the master bedroom, none of us sleeping, every creak and sound making us jump. When dawn finally broke through the curtains, I felt like I could breathe again. Monsters belong to the darkness, right? Daylight meant safety, normalcy, a return to the world that made sense. I was so very wrong about that. The morning sun felt like a blessing. I made coffee while Sarah called the school to say she wouldn't be coming in, and I phoned Henderson to tell him I needed the day off. He grumbled, but agreed when I told him we'd had a break-in attempt. That wasn't exactly a lie. Michael and Emma were quiet during breakfast, pushing their Cheerios around in their bowls. Emma kept looking at the fireplace, and Michael hadn't let go of the baseball bat he'd grabbed from his room during the night. Duke lay under the kitchen table, occasionally whimpering and looking toward the back door. "Dad, what was that thing?" Michael finally asked, his voice small. I exchanged a glance with Sarah. We'd agreed not to scare them more than they already were. "I'm not sure, son, but it's gone now, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't come back." After breakfast, I went outside to examine everything in daylight. The scratches on the back door looked even worse than they had at night, deep gouges that went through the paint and into the wood itself. The doorknob would need replacing entirely. I took my Polaroid camera and snapped a few pictures, though I wasn't sure who I'd show them to. The footprints were still there, clear as day in the dirt around the house. I followed them into the tree line, my shotgun in hand, even though every instinct told me this was foolish. The tracks led about 50 yards into the forest before they simply stopped. Not faded away or became harder to see, they just ended, as if whatever made them had vanished into thin air. I was standing there, staring at the last footprint, when I heard a vehicle approaching. I walked back to the house to find Sheriff Tom Bridger's patrol car pulling into my driveway. Tom was a good man, in his 50s, with gray hair and a weathered face that had seen plenty of desert sun. We'd known each other for years. He brought his police cruiser to our shop for maintenance. "Henderson called me," Tom said, stepping out of his Ford Custom. "Said you had some trouble last night. Wanted to make sure you folks were all right." I showed him the damage to the back door and the footprints. His expression grew more serious as he examined everything. He crouched down by one of the prints, measuring it with his hand, then stood up and took off his hat, running his fingers through his hair. "Daniel, I'm going to be straight with you," he said quietly, glancing toward the house to make sure Sarah and the kids weren't listening. "You're the third person to report something like this in the past month. Jim Whitehorse, who lives about 10 miles north of here, called me 2 weeks ago about something trying to get into his livestock barn. His goats were terrified, and he found tracks just like these. Then Mary Patterson lives out on Route 89. She heard something on her roof last week." "Did they see anything?" I asked. Tom shook his head. "Jim caught a glimpse, said it was tall and moved wrong. Mary just heard it. Both of them are Navajo, and they had some ideas about what it might be, but—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "What kind of ideas?" "Skinwalker," he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear him. "That's what they called it. Now, I'm not a superstitious man, Daniel, but I've lived in Arizona my whole life, and I've heard stories. The Navajo folks don't talk about them lightly, and when they do, they're genuinely scared." I felt a chill run down my spine, despite the warm morning sun. "What exactly is a skinwalker?" Tom put his hat back on and sighed. "According to the stories, it's a witch, someone who's broken a terrible taboo and gained the power to transform into animals. They say these things can look like people but aren't quite right, and they can take the form of animals, wolves, coyotes, birds. The Navajo believe talking about them can attract their attention, which is why most folks won't discuss it." "So what do I do?" I asked. "How do I protect my family from something like that?" "Jim Whitehorse might be able to help you more than I can," Tom said. He knows the old ways. I'll give you his address. In the meantime, I'm going to increase patrols in this area, and I want you to call me immediately if that thing comes back. I don't care what time it is. After Tom left, I sat in my truck for a while, trying to process everything. A skinwalker, a witch that could transform into animals. It sounded crazy, like something from a horror movie. But I'd seen those footprints. I'd seen that thing's shadow. Whatever it was real. Sarah came out and sat beside me in the truck. What did Tom say? I told her everything. To her credit, she didn't laugh or tell me I was being ridiculous. She just sat there, holding my hand, looking out at the forest. We should leave, she said finally. Pack up the kids and stay in town for a while, maybe at my sister's place. And what if it follows us? I asked. What if it decides to go after someone else's family because we ran? No, we need to figure out how to stop this thing. That afternoon, I drove to Jim Whitehorse's place. He lived in a small house with a well-maintained yard and a barn where he kept goats and chickens. He was probably in his 60s, with long gray hair tied back and deep-set eyes that seemed to see right through me. When I introduced myself and explained why I'd come, he nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting me. Come inside, he said. We need to talk. His living room was decorated with traditional Navajo rugs and pottery. He poured us both coffee and sat down across from me. First thing you need to understand, he said, is that talking about these things is dangerous. Every word spoken about them gives them power, draws their attention, but you're already marked, so we're past that point. Marked? I asked. It came to your house specifically. It tried to get inside. That means it's chosen you and your family for some reason. Maybe you offended it somehow, crossed its path, or maybe it just decided it wanted what you have. These things are jealous of normal families, of happiness. They gave up their humanity for power, and they hate seeing others have what they lost. Jim explained that, according to the old stories, there were ways to protect yourself. Ash from certain plants could create a barrier. White ash specifically was believed to be effective. He told me about prayers and ceremonies that could help, but he was honest about the limitations. The problem is, I'm not a medicine man, he said. I know some things, learned them from my grandfather, but the real knowledge is held by people who've trained their whole lives, and even they don't always succeed against something like this. There has to be something I can do, I said. I can't just wait for it to come back and hope it goes away. Jim thought for a moment, then stood up and went to a back room. He returned with a small leather pouch. This is white ash mixed with cornmeal and other things. Spread it around your doors and windows. It might not stop it, but it could slow it down, make it hesitate. And this, he handed me a small turquoise stone on a leather cord. Keep this with you. Turquoise is sacred, protective. It might help. I took the items, feeling the weight of the stone in my palm. Why is it doing this? What does it want? That's the question, isn't it? Jim said. Sometimes they just want to cause fear and chaos. Sometimes they're looking for something specific. But one thing I can tell you, they're smart. Smarter than animals. Because they were once human. They think, they plan, they remember, and they don't give up easily. I drove home as the sun was setting, the turquoise stone around my neck, and the pouch of ash on the seat beside me. The sky was turning orange and purple, and I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see something following me. When I got home, I immediately started spreading the ash mixture around all the doors and windows, creating lines that Jim said shouldn't be broken. Sarah watched from inside, holding Emma, while Michael helped me by holding the flashlight as it got darker. "Will this really work, Dad?" he asked. "I hope so, son," I said, because I couldn't lie to him. We had dinner together, though nobody had much appetite. I kept the shotgun nearby, and we'd moved the television into the master bedroom so we could all stay together. Duke refused to leave my side, constantly alert, his ears swiveling at every sound. Night fell, and we waited. The house was locked up tight, every light on, the ash barriers in place. I sat in a chair facing the bedroom door, shotgun across my lap, while Sarah lay in bed with the kids. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Maybe it wouldn't come back. Maybe the ash was working, keeping it away. I started to let myself hope. Then, at 2:47 a.m., according to our alarm clock, Duke's growl woke everyone up. He was staring at the bedroom window, hackles raised, and I heard it. Footsteps on the roof, slow and deliberate, directly above us. It had come back. The footsteps moved across the roof with deliberate slowness, as if the thing knew we were listening and wanted us to hear every step. Emma started crying, burying her face in Sarah's shoulder. Michael grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in tight. "Stay calm," I whispered, though my own heart was hammering. "Everyone stay right here." The footsteps stopped directly above our bedroom. Then came the scratching, long, slow drags across the shingles that made my teeth clench. Duke's growl turned into frantic barking. I stood up, shotgun ready, watching the ceiling as if I could see through it. Then everything went silent. No footsteps, no scratching, nothing. The silence stretched out for what felt like forever. I was starting to think maybe it had left when I heard something that made my blood freeze. A voice, coming from outside the bedroom window. "Daniel." It was my voice, my exact voice, calling my own name from outside. Sarah gasped. "How does it—" "Don't listen to it," I said quickly, remembering what Jim had told me about skinwalkers being able to mimic voices. "Daniel, let me in." Still my voice, perfectly replicated. "I'm locked out." "Please, it's cold." Michael looked at me with confused, terrified eyes. "Dad?" "That's not me, son. I'm right here. Don't look at the window." The voice changed. Now it was Sarah's voice, sweet and concerned. "Michael, Emma, come to the window. Mommy needs help." Emma whimpered and tried to look, but Sarah held her face against her shoulder. "Don't listen, baby. That's not Mommy. I'm right here." The thing outside made a sound, a laugh that started as Sarah's laugh, but slowly warped into something horrible and inhuman. Then it started cycling through voices rapidly. My mother, who'd been gone for 3 years, Henderson from the shop, Sheriff Bridger. People we knew, people we loved, all calling to us, pleading, demanding, threatening. I aimed the shotgun at the window, even though the curtains were drawn and I couldn't see anything. "Get away from my family," I shouted. The voices stopped. For a moment, there was only the sound of our breathing and Duke's continued growling. Then came a massive impact against the bedroom wall, so hard the whole house shook. Pictures fell off the walls. The lamp on the nightstand toppled over. Another impact, and another. It was ramming the wall, trying to break through. I could see the drywall beginning to crack, small fissures spreading like spider webs. The ash barrier on the window was holding for now, but I didn't know for how long. "Sarah, get the kids into the bathroom," I yelled. "Now!" She grabbed both children and ran for the attached bathroom, slamming the door behind them. I stayed in the bedroom, watching the wall crack and buckle with each impact. If it got through, I'd have to stop it. I had to. The ramming suddenly stopped. I waited, shotgun trained on the damaged wall, expecting it to burst through at any second. Instead, I heard it moving again, back onto the roof, toward the front of the house. I ran out of the bedroom and into the living room, just in time to hear glass shattering. The living room window, I hadn't put enough ash there, hadn't made the line thick enough. The thing's arm came through the broken window, that same impossibly long arm I'd seen in the chimney, reaching, grasping. I fired the shotgun. The blast hit the arm, and that inhuman shriek filled the air again. The arm withdrew, and I heard it leap off the roof and hit the ground. I ran to the broken window and looked out, trying to see where it went. It was standing at the edge of the yard, just beyond the tree line, illuminated by the porch light. For the first time, I got a clear look at it. It was tall, had to be nearly 8 feet, with a body that seemed too thin and elongated. It was wearing what looked like tattered clothes, but its skin was grayish and wrong. The face was the worst part. It looked almost human, but the proportions were off. The features stretched and distorted, and those eyes glowed with that same amber light I'd seen on the highway. It stared at me for a long moment, and I could feel the hatred radiating from it. Then it turned and loped into the forest with that jerky, unnatural gait, disappearing into the darkness. I immediately called Sheriff Bridger, my hand shaking so hard I could barely dial. He arrived 20 minutes later with 2 deputies, and I showed them the damage: the broken window, the cracked bedroom wall, the claw marks everywhere. "You folks can't stay here tonight," Tom said firmly. "Pack some bags. You're coming into town." We spent the rest of the night at a motel on Route 66, all 4 of us crammed into one room with Duke lying across the doorway. Nobody slept. When morning came, I called Jim Whitehorse and told him what had happened. "The ash slowed it down but didn't stop it," Jim said over the phone. "That means it's strong, determined. Daniel, I think you need to talk to someone with more knowledge than me. There's a medicine man, Thomas Begay, who lives up near Tuba City. He's dealt with this kind of thing before." "Will he help us?" I asked. "I'll call him, explain the situation. But Daniel, you need to understand. What he might ask you to do won't be easy, and there's no guarantee it will work." That afternoon, I drove up to Tuba City alone. Sarah wanted to come, but we agreed she should stay with the kids at the motel where it was safe. The drive took about 2 hours, my F-100 cruising along Highway 89 through the painted desert. The landscape was beautiful, red rocks and endless sky, but I couldn't enjoy it. My mind kept replaying the sight of that thing's face. Thomas Begay lived in a traditional hogan, a 6-sided structure made of logs and earth. He was an elderly man, probably in his 70s, with deeply lined face and eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. He invited me inside, where we sat on woven rugs while he listened to my story. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time, just looking at me. Finally, he spoke. "This skinwalker has marked your family. It won't stop until it gets what it wants, or until it's stopped permanently." "What does it want?" I asked. "That depends on what kind of person it was before. Some want to cause chaos and feed on fear. Others have specific targets, specific revenge they're seeking. Tell me, have you had any conflicts recently? Anyone who might wish you harm?" I thought about it. "No, nothing like that. I'm just a mechanic. I fix cars, go home to my family, live a quiet life." Thomas nodded slowly. "Sometimes that's enough. A skinwalker who gave up their humanity for power, seeing someone with a happy family, a normal life, it breeds jealousy, resentment. They want to destroy what reminds them of what they lost." "How do I stop it?" I asked desperately. "There is a ceremony," Thomas said, "a protection ritual that might shield your family, create a barrier it cannot cross. But it requires preparation, and it requires your whole family to participate. And even then, it may only keep you safe temporarily. The permanent solution..." He hesitated. "What? What's the permanent solution?" "The skinwalker must be confronted and defeated, not just driven away, but truly stopped. This usually means finding where it lives during the day, where it rests. Skinwalkers are strongest at night, but during the day, they're more vulnerable. But finding such a place is dangerous, and confronting one is more dangerous still." I felt a weight settle in my chest. "If I don't, it'll keep coming back." "Yes," Thomas said simply, "it will hunt your family until it succeeds, or until one of you is gone from this place. They are patient, and they never forget." We talked for another hour. Thomas explained the ceremony he could perform, the items I'd need to gather, the preparations required. He also told me things about skinwalkers that Jim hadn't known or hadn't wanted to tell me. How they moved, how they hunted, their weaknesses and strengths. "One more thing," Thomas said as I was leaving. "You said it tried to come down your chimney, and you shot at it there. Then last night you shot its arm through the window. Did you hit it both times?" "I think so, yes. Why?" "Skinwalkers can heal from many injuries, but not instantly. If you wounded it, it will need time to recover. That gives you a window of opportunity, maybe a day or two, before it's strong enough to attack again. Use that time wisely. I drove back to Flagstaff as the sun was setting, my mind racing with everything Thomas had told me. I had to gather supplies for the ceremony: corn pollen, sacred tobacco, turquoise beads, white shell, and other items. Thomas had given me a list and told me where I might find them. When I got back to the motel, Sarah could see the determination in my face. What did he say? I told her everything about the ceremony, about the need to find and confront the Skinwalker, about the danger we were in if we didn't act. Then we do the ceremony, Sarah said firmly. Whatever it takes to protect our children. That night, I lay awake in the motel bed, listening to my family breathe in sleep they'd finally succumbed to from exhaustion. Through the window, I could see the stars, bright and clear in the desert sky. Somewhere out there, that thing was healing, planning, waiting. But now I had a plan too, and I wasn't going to let it hurt my family. Tomorrow, we would prepare, and soon, one way or another, this would end. The next morning, I started gathering the items Thomas Begay had specified. Sarah stayed at the motel with the kids while I drove to a trading post that Thomas had recommended, a small place run by a Navajo family who understood what I needed without me having to explain too much. The woman behind the counter, probably in her 50s with traditional jewelry and kind eyes, carefully packaged each item as I purchased them. Corn pollen in a small leather pouch, sacred tobacco wrapped in red cloth, turquoise beads, white shell pieces, and several bundles of specific herbs I couldn't pronounce. "Your family is in danger," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." She added one more item to my bag without charging me, a small bundle of sage tied with red string. "Burn this in your home before the ceremony. It cleanses negative energy. And, sir," she looked directly into my eyes, "be very careful. What you're dealing with, it's not something to take lightly." "I know," I said. "Thank you." When I returned to the motel, I found Sheriff Bridger's patrol car parked outside our room. My heart jumped into my throat as I ran to the door, but Tom met me with raised hands. "Everyone's fine," he said quickly. "I just came to check on you folks and bring some news." Inside, Sarah was reading to Emma from a book about horses, while Michael watched cartoons on the small television. Duke lifted his head when I entered, but didn't move from his position by the door. Tom and I stepped outside to talk privately. "I did some checking around," he said, pulling out a small notebook. "Asked some of the older Navajo folks in the area about any unusual activity. Turns out there's an abandoned uranium mine about 12 miles from your place, closed down in the 50s. A few people mentioned seeing lights out there at night sometimes, hearing strange sounds. One old rancher said his cattle won't go anywhere near that area even though there's good grazing." "You think that's where it's hiding?" I asked. "I think it's worth investigating. But Daniel, I'm going to be straight with you. I can't officially help you with this. What Thomas Begay told you about confronting it, that's outside my jurisdiction as sheriff. I deal with human criminals, not—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "I understand," I said. "You've already helped more than I could ask. But," Tom continued, "I can tell you that if you were to go out to that mine during daylight hours to look around, and if you happen to have your hunting rifle with you, well, a man's got a right to carry a firearm on public land. And if something were to happen out there, some kind of accident or self-defense situation, I'd be inclined to believe your account of events." I looked at him, understanding what he was really saying. He couldn't help officially, but he wasn't going to stop me either. "Thank you, Tom," he nodded, then reached into his patrol car and pulled out a box of shells. "Extra ammunition, just in case you go hunting." He paused. "Jim Whitehorse mentioned that regular bullets might not be enough, but there are stories that say blessed ammunition or silver works better. I can't confirm that, but I'm just passing along what I've heard." After Tom left, I told Sarah about the mine. We agreed that tomorrow Thomas would come to perform the protection ceremony, and the day after, I would go to the mine. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all we had. That afternoon, I drove back to our house for the first time since the attack. I needed to get some things, clothes for the family, Michael's school books, some of Emma's toys to help her feel more comfortable at the motel. But I also wanted to check on the house, see if there were any new signs of the creature. The damage from 2 nights ago was still visible, the broken window, the scratched doors, the cracked bedroom wall. But there was something new. In the dirt of our front yard, someone had drawn a symbol. It was circular with lines radiating from the center and strange markings I didn't recognize. It looked like it had been drawn with a stick or maybe a finger. I took a Polaroid picture of it, then scuffed it out with my boot. Whatever it meant, I didn't want it on my property. As I was gathering items from inside the house, Duke suddenly started barking furiously. He was at the back door, hackles raised. I grabbed my shotgun and cautiously approached. Through the window, I could see something at the edge of the forest, a coyote, just sitting there watching the house. But there was something wrong about the way it sat. Too still, too focused. Its eyes had that same amber glow. I watched it for a full minute. It didn't move, just stared at the house with an intensity that no normal animal would have. Then it stood up, and I swear it looked directly at me through the window, as if it knew exactly where I was standing. It opened its mouth, and I heard a sound that no coyote should make, a laugh, low and mocking, almost human. Then it turned and trotted into the forest, that same unnatural gait I'd seen before. I quickly finished gathering what we needed and left, checking my rearview mirror constantly during the drive back to town. The coyote had been the Skinwalker, I was certain of it. It was watching us, studying us, maybe trying to figure out our plans. That evening, Thomas Begay arrived at the motel. He'd driven down from Tuba City with several large bags containing items for the ceremony. The motel manager, an older Hispanic man named Mr. Rodriguez, gave us permission to use the small courtyard behind the building. "I've heard stories about these things," Mr. Rodriguez said quietly. "My grandmother was Yaqui from Mexico. We have similar legends. If this ceremony will help protect your family, you have my blessing to do it here." As the sun set, Thomas began setting up. He created a circle in the courtyard using corn pollen, marking the 4 directions with special prayers. Inside the circle, he placed the turquoise white shell and other sacred items. He had us all sit inside the circle, me, Sarah, Michael, Emma, and even Duke. Thomas began to chant in Navajo, his voice deep and rhythmic. He burned the herbs and tobacco, and the smoke filled the circle with a sharp, clean scent. He touched each of our foreheads with corn pollen, speaking prayers I couldn't understand, but could feel the power of. The ceremony lasted over 2 hours. Michael and Emma were remarkably patient, sensing the importance of what was happening. As Thomas chanted, I felt something shift in the air, a change I couldn't quite describe. It was like a weight being lifted, or a shield being raised around us. When it was finished, Thomas looked exhausted. "The protection is in place," he said. "It will shield you from direct spiritual attack. The Skinwalker cannot use its voice to deceive you anymore, cannot enter your dreams, cannot influence your thoughts. But it can still harm you physically if you encounter it. This ceremony protects your spirits, not your bodies." "How long does it last?" Sarah asked. "As long as you keep the items I'm giving you close, these blessed pouches." He handed each of us a small leather bag. "Wear them always. And this corn pollen, sprinkle it around wherever you sleep. The protection will hold." After Thomas left, we returned to our motel room. For the first time in days, I felt like we could breathe a little easier. The immediate spiritual danger had been addressed, but I knew the physical threat remained. I spent the evening cleaning my Remington hunting rifle and the shotgun, checking both weapons carefully. I also took a silver chain that had belonged to my mother, a necklace she'd worn every day, and broke it into pieces. Using pliers from my toolbox, I carefully opened several rifle cartridges and added small pieces of the silver to each one before resealing them. I didn't know if the old stories about silver were true, but I wasn't taking chances. Sarah watched me work. "You're really going to that mine tomorrow?" "I have to," I said. "As long as that thing is out there, we'll never be safe. The ceremony bought us protection, but not freedom. I need to end this." "Then I'm coming with you," she said firmly. "Sarah, no. The kids will stay with my sister in Phoenix. I already called her. She's driving up tomorrow morning to get them, and before you argue, remember that I know how to shoot too. My father taught me on the ranch growing up. You might need backup." I wanted to argue, but I could see the determination in her eyes. She was right. I might need help. And leaving the kids with Sarah's sister, away from Flagstaff entirely, was probably the safest option anyway. That night, I barely slept. Tomorrow, my children would be on their way to Phoenix, safe and far from danger. And tomorrow afternoon, Sarah and I would drive out to that abandoned mine. One way or another, this would end soon. I just hoped we would survive it. Sarah's sister Linda arrived at 10 in the morning, driving her husband's Buick station wagon. She was younger than Sarah by 3 years, with the same kind eyes, but a more nervous disposition. When we told her the basic situation, leaving out the specifics about skinwalkers, she agreed immediately to take the kids. "You come to Phoenix as soon as this is handled," Linda said, hugging Sarah tight. "Whatever you're dealing with, you don't face it alone longer than you have to." Michael hugged me hard before getting in the car. "Be careful, Dad." "I will, son. You take care of your sister, all right?" Emma cried when we said goodbye, and it nearly broke my heart. "I want to stay with you and Mommy." "I know, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down to her level. "But Aunt Linda is going to take you somewhere fun and safe. We'll come get you very soon, I promise." As we watched the station wagon drive away, Sarah took my hand. "We're doing the right thing." "I know," I said, though my chest felt tight. We spent the next few hours preparing. I packed both rifles, the shotgun, extra ammunition, including the silver-modified rounds, flashlights, rope, my hunting knife, and the blessed items Thomas had given us. Sarah insisted on bringing a first aid kit and some food and water, practical as always. At 2 in the afternoon, we climbed into my F-100 and headed toward the abandoned mine. Tom had given me rough directions and a geological survey map from the county office. The mine was located in a remote area, accessible only by an old service road that probably hadn't seen regular use in 15 years. The drive took about 40 minutes. We turned off the main highway onto a dirt road that was barely visible, overgrown with brush and dotted with rocks. My truck handled it well enough, but we had to go slow. The landscape around us was typical high desert: juniper trees, scrub brush, red rocks, and endless sky. "There," Sarah said, pointing ahead. The mine entrance was built into the side of a small mesa, a dark opening framed by old timber supports and rusted metal rails where ore cars had once run. There was an old wooden building nearby, probably an office or equipment shed, with a collapsed roof and walls weathered gray by years of sun and wind. Everything was surrounded by a sagging chain-link fence with faded warning signs about danger and no trespassing. I parked the truck about 50 yards from the fence, positioning it so we could leave quickly if needed. We sat there for a moment, both of us staring at that dark mine entrance. "It feels wrong here," Sarah said quietly. "Can you feel it?" I could. There was something oppressive about the place, a heaviness in the air that had nothing to do with the afternoon heat. Even the birds seemed to avoid this area. Everything was too quiet. We got out of the truck, and I handed Sarah the shotgun while I took the rifle. "Stay close to me. If anything happens, we run for the truck. Don't try to be a hero." "Same to you," she said, managing a small smile despite her fear. We approached the fence and found a section where we could climb through. The ground near the mine entrance was disturbed, footprints in the dust, the same elongated prints with claw marks I'd seen at our house. They led directly into the mine. "It's definitely here," I whispered. We stood at the mine entrance, peering into the darkness. The tunnel extended back into the mesa, disappearing into blackness after about 20 feet. The timber supports looked unstable, and there was a smell coming from inside, something like decay mixed with musk, animal and wrong at the same time. I turned on my flashlight and started forward. Sarah stayed right behind me, her own flashlight cutting through the darkness beside mine. Our footsteps echoed off the stone walls. The mine shaft was maybe 8 feet high and 10 feet wide, with support beams every few yards and old rail tracks running along the floor. We'd gone maybe 50 yards when we found the first sign of habitation. Bones were scattered across the tunnel floor. Animal bones, from the look of them. Rabbits, coyotes, maybe a deer. They'd been cracked open, the marrow extracted. My stomach turned. "Daniel," Sarah whispered, pointing her light at the wall. Scratches covered the stone, thousands of them, like someone or something had been clawing at the walls. Some of the marks formed patterns that might have been symbols, or might have just been random. Either way, they gave me chills. We continued deeper. The tunnel branched several times, but we followed the main shaft, always moving forward. The temperature dropped as we went deeper, and the smell got worse. Then we found it, a chamber that had been carved out wider than the rest of the tunnel, probably where miners had found a good uranium deposit years ago. The chamber had been turned into a den. More bones littered the floor, along with torn pieces of fabric that might have been clothing. In one corner was a pile of what looked like animal hides, coyote, wolf, maybe others. And on the walls, painted in something dark I didn't want to identify, were symbols similar to the one I'd found in my yard. But the chamber was empty. The Skinwalker wasn't here. "Where is it?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with tension. I was about to answer when I heard it, a sound from deeper in the mine, from one of the side tunnels we'd passed. A scraping sound like claws on stone, getting closer. "Back to the entrance," I said urgently. "Now." We turned and started moving quickly back the way we'd come, our flashlight beams bouncing crazily off the walls. Behind us, the scraping sound grew louder, faster. It was following us. We reached the first branch in the tunnel, and I risked a glance back. My flashlight caught movement in the darkness, something large and pale, moving with that terrible jerky gait. The amber eyes reflected my light. "Run!" I shouted. We sprinted through the tunnel, no longer worried about noise or caution. Behind us, I could hear it coming faster, and it was making sounds, a mixture of clicking, hissing, and something that might have been laughter. We burst out of the mine entrance into the bright afternoon sun. The sudden light was blinding after the darkness of the tunnel. We ran for the truck, and I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking. The creature appeared at the mine entrance. In full daylight, it was even more horrifying than I'd imagined. It stood at least 7.5 feet tall, its body covered in that grayish skin that looked stretched too tight over elongated bones. It was wearing tattered remains of what might have once been human clothes. The face was a nightmare. Almost human features, but distorted, with a mouth that opened too wide and too many teeth. It took a step out of the mine entrance, into the direct sunlight, and recoiled. The skin where the sun touched seemed to smoke slightly. Thomas had been right. It was vulnerable during the day, at least to direct sunlight. But the sun wouldn't last forever. In a few hours it would set, and then that thing would have the advantage again. I raised my rifle and fired. The shot hit it in the shoulder, spinning it around. It shrieked, that horrible, inhuman sound, and stumbled back toward the mine entrance. I fired again and again, putting 3 more rounds into it. Sarah fired the shotgun once, the blast echoing across the desert. The creature retreated into the mine, wounded but not stopped. We could hear it inside, making sounds of rage and pain. "We need to finish this," I said, ejecting the spent cartridge and loading one of my silver-modified rounds. "If we leave now, it'll heal and come after us again." "What do you suggest?" Sarah asked, reloading the shotgun. I looked at the old wooden building near the mine, then at the truck. An idea formed. Help me gather some of that dry wood from the collapsed building and get the gas can from the truck bed. It took us 15 minutes to pile wood and brush at the mine entrance. I doused it all with the gasoline from my emergency can, creating a barrier of fuel-soaked timber. From inside the mine, we could hear the creature moving, probably trying to heal from its wounds. When I light this, that thing is going to try to get out, I said. Be ready. I struck a match and tossed it onto the pile. The gasoline ignited with a whoosh, flames shooting up and spreading across the wood. Black smoke began pouring into the mine entrance. We waited, weapons ready. The smoke would fill the tunnels, drive it out. It would have to choose, stay inside and suffocate, or come out into the sunlight where it was vulnerable. For several minutes, nothing happened except the growing fire. Then, we heard it. Movement in the smoke, coming closer. It burst through the flames, its clothes and parts of its skin on fire. Shrieking in agony and fury, I fired the silver round. It hit the creature's center mass, and this time the effect was different. Where the bullet struck, the flesh seemed to burn from within, smoke rising from the wound. The creature stumbled, fell to its knees. Sarah fired the shotgun, then fired again. I shot twice more with regular rounds, then loaded another silver piece and fired once more into the creature's head. It collapsed onto the desert floor, twitching and convulsing. The amber light in its eyes flickered and dimmed. Slowly, impossibly, its body began to change. The elongated features shortened, the gray skin took on a more human color. Within minutes, what lay on the ground was recognizable as a person. An elderly man, maybe in his 70s, wearing the rotted remains of old-fashioned clothes. Is it over? Sarah asked, her voice shaking. I approached carefully, rifle still ready, but the body didn't move. The eyes were now just eyes, open and lifeless, no amber glow remaining. I think so. We stood there for a long time, watching the fire burn and the smoke rise into the clear desert sky. Eventually, I used the truck's radio to call Sheriff Bridger. When Tom arrived an hour later with a deputy, we told him we'd found an old vagrant living in the mine who'd attacked us, and we'd defended ourselves. The fire had been an accident during the confrontation. Tom examined the body, now looking like nothing more than an unfortunate person who'd been living rough. I'll handle the paperwork, Tom said quietly, pulling me aside. As far as the official report goes, this was self-defense against a transient. The mine was dangerous and caught fire. Simple as that. He looked at me knowingly. Whatever really happened here, I'm glad you and Sarah are safe. We drove back to town as the sun was setting. Neither of us spoke much. The blessed pouches Thomas had given us hung around our necks, and I could still feel their weight, their protection. That night, we checked into a hotel in Phoenix, reuniting with Michael and Emma. We held them close, and I realized something had changed in me. I'd faced something impossible, something that shouldn't exist, and I'd survived. My family had survived. The next morning, something impossible happened again, but this time it was wonderful. When I woke up, I found Emma standing by the hotel window, and she turned to me with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. "Daddy, look, it snowed." I went to the window. Phoenix never got snow, especially not in September. But there it was, a light dusting of white covering everything, glittering in the morning sun. It was melting already, but it was real. Sarah came to stand beside me, and we watched our children press their faces against the window, marveling at the impossible snow. After everything we'd been through, this felt like a gift, a sign that the world could still surprise us with beauty instead of horror. "We made it," Sarah said softly. "Yeah," I replied, putting my arm around her. "We did." The snow melted within an hour, gone like a dream. But we'd remember it, that moment of impossible beauty following days of impossible terror. Life would return to normal eventually. We'd go home, repair the damage to our house, resume our routines. But we'd never forget what we'd faced and what we'd learned, that monsters are real, but so is courage, that families protect each other no matter what, and that sometimes after the darkest night, the morning brings something wonderful and impossible, like snow in the desert, like hope renewed.